Guys, what is going on? Because we covered some of the rumours regarding Resident Evil 9 last week and touched on the possibility of an RE1 remake happening, I thought it would be good to do a little bit of a video here on the latest rumours that just came out only a couple of hours ago here, I think. Yeah, so these rumours are actually quite fresh. As always, take them with a grain of salt. I am somebody who's been playing these games for a long time, since the original Resident Evil, so I have had a bit of a rocky relationship with this series as a whole, so my opinion is based on somebody who's played these games for a long time and considered these games some of my favourite games that I've ever played to this day. I'm honestly really surprised that there's already rumours like literally a week later regarding the possibility of an RE1 remake happening. It is all fueling the speculation that there maybe is going to be an RE1 remake happening sooner than expected, and I think that's a pretty cool thing overall. Without further ado, I'll just get into some of the rumours here and we'll go over them and see what we think about them. So the first rumour off the bat here is that the name of the actual game itself is going to be titled Biohazard RE1. Yes, so it's actually going to have a 1 in the title, and you know, I never really thought about that as being a possibility. I don't mind it. There is some games that do it pretty bad and actually like ruin a legacy of a game or even a machine, for example, like Xbox One. Terrible name, right? Just absolutely kind of ruined the legacy of the original Xbox. Mortal Kombat 1 is one of the more recent examples where it kind of like replaces the identity of the original game and just kind of like screws it up for everyone who's ever like looking back on the original Mortal Kombat game, trying to overwrite it. Just makes it awkward. But I will say here, for the possibility of this remake of RE1 actually having a 1 in the title, I don't think it's the worst thing ever. I think it's overall something that I never even thought about, and I don't think it's a bad thing. The only reason I say that is because I don't think Capcom maybe want to overwrite the legacy of the original game and the original game's remake that maybe take place in like the old continuity. So the fact that the new remake would actually have a 1 in it distinguishes it to being more in line with the newer continuity. That's what I think about it, and I overall don't think it's a bad thing. Second rumour here is that it's going to be even slower paced than RE2 Remake, and you know, I don't really know how to like comment about that because I'm not a huge RE2 Remake guy. I've made my feelings clear that the remake isn't really my favourite remake they've made. My favourite remake they've made is RE4 Remake from the newer games because I feel like it really done justice to what RE4 was. Obviously that's an action-paced, heavy game, and you know, it's all about the gunplay, and that's what makes the gameplay as good as it is, and what makes the game as addictive as it is for me is how good the gunplay is. But RE1 Remake going back to being even slower paced than RE2 Remake, that's fine. Because I actually prefer those kind of games overall if they're done right. But the thing is, I do think slower paced games are harder to do in an over-the-shoulder camera format or whatever it is they're going to do, because I just didn't think they done RE2 Remake entirely as good as what it could have been. There's areas that it could have improved, but obviously we'll need to wait and see what happens with this RE1 Remake's pacing. Maybe some of the rumours that are left here will give us an insight into what they're thinking. So the third thing on the list here is that each zombie will actually have their own unique model due to the small number of enemies that are going to be within the game. So I guess this actually coincides with it being slower paced than RE2 Remake in a way. I actually do like the idea of zombies all having their own unique appearance. I think that's really cool concept. Can't wait to see it in action if it actually is true. Does maybe scare me a wee bit that maybe there's going to be even less enemies in the game than what I'm thinking. Like, I do want the game to be slow paced, but I don't want it to be like, honestly, like really, really slow paced, just like walking and talking kind of thing. If it's too slow paced, you know, you run the risk of boring players. Like, trust me, it is a thing. I mean, even me, I've played like a lot of survival horrors. I've played the RE games since the original. The original games are slow paced, but they're no snail paced. So I really don't want the game to be snail paced or anything, and maybe we see like one enemy every 20 minutes. I think more people would maybe be a wee bit bored of that. than actually happy about it. Let me know what you think about that one. I feel like they would have to get the balance perfect with that, but overall, I really like the idea of each zombie having their own unique appearance. That is the better part of what this is saying. Next thing on the list here is saying that more bullets required to take out RE1 zombies than RE2 Remake, quoted as bullet sponges. Okay, this is a bad thing right off the bat, unfortunately. Bullet sponges are never a good thing. I mean, I didn't really mind it in RE2 Remake because there was always ways around it to make the enemies die quicker, like a shotgun blast right to the head, mostly dealt with them in a one-shot, you know, as usual. So maybe they'll end up being like some little gimmick to the game where you can kill the enemy easier. But I really don't like the idea of just like bullet sponge enemies entirely, because what that encourages is people just running by the enemies. Now, Resident Evil has a history of running by enemies, don't get me wrong, absolutely. But like, you don't want to like incentivize it on a first playthrough and stuff, just completely running by it. There's no point in taking down this guy because he's going to take 100 bullets. It really just takes you away from actually interacting with the game itself. Do you know where I'm coming from with that one? Let me know what you think. And the next thing here is that Crimson Heads will return. Shocker. Yes, Crimson Heads were even in the original Resident Evil. Actually, the director's cut is the game they were in. Essentially, they were kind of like super zombies back then. They moved faster and took a lot more bullets, but you could one-shot them with a Magnum. And obviously, a lot of people only think Crimson Heads are part of RE1 Remake, but they were an actual alternate take on the enemies that existed in the arranged mode, advanced mode or the original RE1 that came out with a director's cut. So, yeah, I mean, of course, like any new RE1 games should have Crimson Heads in it, and maybe they'll do a bigger thing about them. Maybe they will make them like the more action-focused zombie to take down, where it's actually like relatively hard. Like maybe they'll move like a Ganado, for instance, and like that can be the more zombies that make you interact with them that are more action focused and slower paced, you know, because like if the game's saying it's more slower paced, sure, we'll have all these more slower paced zombies, but then the Crimson Head will maybe keep us on our feet. That's what I think. But I mean, obviously Crimson Heads are returning. I'm happy with that. I can't see a world where people didn't want them returning. Begs the question, will we still have to burn them? Maybe there'll be more resources with that stuff too. Who knows? And it's also saying here that the RE1 lore will be explored further. Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I would really like the Lisa Trevor stuff and her family to be explored a little bit further, just for an example. I don't know if you remember, like in Umbrella Chronicles, they even added a little bit of extra lore at the end when Wesker was escaping for that little scenario. I always found that pretty sick. Know that I would want that to be in there. Maybe they could do something like that. That would be cool. But it would also be cool if they done like a canon finish to the story in the game. You know, a lot of like Resident Evils don't have like the proper path of what the story was supposed to be. Like the original game is a mixture between Chris and Jill, and I lead more towards Chris being the canon ending, but it'd be nice if they actually like said it straight and said this is what the ending is supposed to be. I'm leaning towards them actually not doing that still, because if RE2 Remake is any proof to go by, they don't really want to do a canon route for people to know what it is. They kind of want to leave an era of mystery about it, so maybe they won't expand on that. Let me know what you would want to see, though. I would like extra stories in the mansion, like kind of like little side stories, like what happened within Evil Within 2, if any of you have seen that. Would like some side stories in the mansion, separate stories entirely for new characters that we've never heard of before. Second last thing it's talking about here is they're going to have a different third-person camera that will be used. Slower paced again, it says. So I don't think it's going to be anything like fixed camera angles. Oh man, I would hope so. That would be so cool if they had like a bonus fixed camera angle mode for an RE1 remake. I would love it. I know maybe a lot of other people wouldn't, but I personally would love that feature. But what I think it's actually going to be, if I was to take a guess, I've honestly said that Dead Space 1 Original, that game does the over-the-shoulder camera as perfect as like a survival horror has ever taken it. It's more claustrophobic over his shoulder. You cannot see around all the corners, and I think that is actually the approach that they're going to take to this RE1 remake. I feel like it's the only way they can do it. I do feel like the mansion will actually be a bigger version of the mansion that we've ever had before, totally expanded upon. New areas as well, purely because of this feature, because I do think they are going to copy the original Dead Space 1 way that it was done. Let me know what you think about that. I feel like that's what they're referring to when they're talking about a different third-person camera here. It's just going to be closer to them to give you that more claustrophobic feel. So when we're like getting ready to turn corners, these really important zombies, because there's only going to be like a handful of them in the game, it's saying here, so they're going to make every experience actually like stick out, and the camera's going to play a pretty huge part in it, I think. And the last thing on the list here is that it says there's going to be no more pre-rendered backgrounds. Each room will load up background assets, and the rest of the assets will load when the doors are opened. This is to improve visuals and lighting. I mean, I don't really think there's much point in talking about this one. It's not like we expected pre-rendered backgrounds to be in one of the newer Resident Evil games. It would be really cool to see a take on that being done, obviously, but I don't think there's much to talk about with this one. It's just kind of like informing you that there's not going to be any pre-rendered backgrounds. And that's all the rumors. That's everything that there is. I would honestly say that this is like some really good info here for like a rumor. I'm more leaning towards the possibility of this remake actually being true now, just because we've had like 2 sets of rumors about it being true in the past week, and with the 30th anniversary coming up, you know, it's just got me thinking that this is possibly happening, and there's just too much like specific information coming out about the title at this point. Overall, what do you guys actually think about all this stuff that's here? Do you actually like all the stuff that you have heard? Is there a couple of things you have got beef with? You have heard all my opinions on them here. Let me know what you think about them. Thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.